Let's simplify some exponential expressions. Before we get into the simplifying, I want to just quickly review the rules. So the product rule. The product rule says if we multiply with the same base, so a to the m times a to the n, we add the exponents. So a to the m plus n. The quotient rule, similarly, if I would have x to the m divided by x to the n, same base of x, I will subtract. So x to the m minus n. Makes it kind of nice. In the power rule, if I would have y raised to the k raised to the m, so a power raised to another power, this is a power rule, means we multiply. So I would end up with y to the k, oh, that's ugly, y to the k times m power. The zero exponent rule. The zero exponent rule basically says anything raised to the zero power is 1. Negative exponent rule, if I have a number raised to a negative exponent, so a to the negative n, we just flip it. So we'd have 1 over a to the positive n. That also works if I would have 1 over x to the negative n, and I can flip that would give me just x to the positive n. Those are both true. Power of a product, if I have a times b to the n power, so I'm multiplying inside, right? That's the product part, raised to a power, then everything in there, a to the n times b to the n, gets raised to that exponent. And last, power of a quotient. If I have x over y raised to the n power, everything inside, everything of that quotient is raised to that power. So x to the n over y to the n. Okay, let's do just a couple of these. So I have 3x to the third, y to the negative fourth squared. So here we have a product to a power and a power to a power. Now, if you're a very visual person, I would recommend breaking this out. So we have 3 pieces inside this problem, each one of them being taken to to the second power. So 3 squared times x to the third squared times y to the negative fourth squared, right? So you can kind of break it up into 3 pieces and then simplify. 3 squared gives me 9. Power to a power, we multiply. So x to the third to the second is x to the sixth, and y to the negative fourth to the second is y to the negative eighth. Now at this point you might say I'm done, but a lot of times we don't want to write our answers with negative exponents. So we'll say, okay, we have y to the negative eighth. Right now everything is in the numerator, right? If you don't have a fraction, you're just over 1. So when we do that, we could say, okay, 9 is not a negative exponent, so it's going to stay in the numerator. X to the sixth is a positive exponent. It's going to stay where it is. And then anything with a negative exponent flips to the other side, right? So if it starts in the numerator, it'll flip to the denominator. If it starts in the denominator, it flips to the numerator. In this case, since we start in the numerator, y to the eighth flips to the denominator. So my final answer is 9x to the sixth over y to the eighth. Let's look at a quotient. So I have 4xy to the third all raised to the second power divided by 2x squared y all raised to the third power. So now we have a product to a power in each the numerator and the denominator, and then we need to simplify that. So, okay, so first let's look at the numerator. So I have 4 squared times x squared times y to the third squared. And we'll simplify that to get 16x squared y to the sixth. Remember, power to a power, we multiply. Okay, let's look at the denominator. So now I have 2 to the third times x squared to the third times y to the third. Okay, 2 to the third power is 8. 2 times 3, right? X to the second to the third is x to the sixth. And then y to the third is just y to the third. Okay, so that's the first step. Now we simplify. So if we think about the quotient rule, same base, we subtract our exponents. Well, first things first, 16 divided by 8 is 2. Okay, then we look at our x's. So I have x to the 2 minus 6 power, because it's always numerator exponent minus denominator exponent. So that gives me x to the negative 4. And then y to the 6th minus 3 is y to the third. Same idea here where this is like a fraction over 1. So because I have that negative exponent, anything with a positive exponent stays in the top, and the negative exponent moves to the denominator. So our final answer is 2y to the third over x to the fourth. And let's just do one more real quick. 3x to the third squared over 3y to the second. All right, so we'll just do this one quickly. 3 squared is 9. X to the third squared gives me x to the sixth. And then in the denominator, 3 squared is 9. Y to the second squared is y to the fourth. Now you'll notice that I have 9 in the numerator and the denominator, so those cancel out. And I'm just left with x to the sixth over y to the fourth. And that is playing with some of our exponential rules.